It's funny how life changes in an instant. One moment, you're just doing your job, living your life the way you always have, and the next, you're caught in something much bigger than yourself. But what if that one moment didn't just change your life? What if it changed your heart forever? Emma Collins never imagined her life would take such a turn. She was a simple woman, smart, hardworking, and fiercely independent. As a professional nanny, she had spent years caring for children, bringing warmth into homes that often lacked it. But she had rules. She never got too attached, never let emotions blur the lines of her work. And she certainly never thought she'd find herself standing in the grand estate of Nicholas Carter, the elusive, brooding billionaire whose heart seemed as impenetrable as the walls of his mansion. Nicholas Carter wasn't just rich, he was powerful. A man who built his empire from the ground up. He had everything money could buy. Everything, except the one thing he once cherished the most, his wife. Since losing her, he had buried himself in work, letting the world assume he was cold, detached, even ruthless. But beneath the layers of control and steel-like resolve, there was one person who still had a hold on him, his 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was bright, kind, and innocent, but she was also lonely. With a father too busy to see her pain and a revolving door of nannies who never stayed long enough, she had learned not to get attached. That is, until Emma walked into her life. What none of them knew was that fate was about to intervene. Because in a single moment of danger, Emma would prove that love isn't just about words or promises, it's about action. And sometimes, the people who change our lives the most are the ones we never saw coming. The grand Carter estate loomed over the landscape like a castle frozen in time, beautiful but distant. It was the kind of place that should have felt alive with laughter and warmth, yet silence seemed to settle in every corner. As Emma Collins stood at the entrance, gripping the handle of her suitcase, she felt a strange mixture of excitement and uncertainty. She had worked in many wealthy homes before, but this was different. This wasn't just another job. This was a household known for being impossible to crack. Nicholas Carter had been through 6 nannies in the past year, each leaving with stories of impossible expectations and an employer too preoccupied with his billion-dollar empire to care about anything else. But Emma wasn't easily scared off. Mrs. Thompson, the housekeeper, greeted her with a knowing smile. "You must be Emma," she said, her voice warm but cautious. "I hope you last longer than the others." Emma returned the smile. "I'm not one to give up easily." Mrs. Thompson led her through the marble-floored halls, past priceless artwork and elegant chandeliers. "Lily is a sweet girl, but she needs stability," she explained. "Mr. Carter, well, he means well, but he's not the easiest man to work for." Emma had already read between the lines before stepping foot inside. Nicholas Carter was a man who valued efficiency over emotions, business over personal connections. But Emma wasn't here for him. She was here for Lily. When they reached the playroom, Emma's heart softened at the sight before her. A little girl with chestnut curls sat on the floor, cradling a stuffed rabbit in her lap. Her wide blue eyes flickered toward Emma, filled with curiosity but also hesitation. "Lily," Mrs. Thompson said gently, "this is Miss Emma. She's going to be your new nanny." Lily didn't say anything at first, just hugged her rabbit a little tighter. Emma knelt to her level, offering a warm smile. "Hi, Lily. That's a beautiful bunny. What's her name?" Lily hesitated, then whispered, "Rosie." "Well, Rosie looks very loved," Emma said. "Would you like to show me around?" There was a pause, but then, slowly, Lily nodded. It was small, but it was a start. As Emma followed Lily around the playroom, she couldn't help but feel that this little girl needed more than just a nanny. She needed someone who wouldn't leave. What Emma didn't know was that someone else was watching. From the doorway, Nicholas Carter stood with his arms crossed, his sharp gaze assessing the scene before him. He had hired Emma because her resume was impressive, but he had no expectations. All he knew was that nannies never lasted long in this house, and he doubted this one would be any different. The first few days in the Carter household were a quiet test of patience and persistence. Lily was slow to trust, but Emma didn't push. Instead, she found small ways to make the little girl feel safe. Reading bedtime stories, leaving a nightlight on, and sitting with her during meals when her father was too busy to join. At first, Nicholas Carter remained a shadow in the background, always working, always distant. But Emma noticed things. The way his gaze lingered on Lily when he thought no one was watching. The way he clenched his jaw when she reached for her stuffed rabbit instead of her father's hand. He wasn't heartless, just lost. One evening, Emma was setting up a tea party in the playroom when Lily tugged on her sleeve. "Miss Emma," she said softly. "Yes, sweetheart." Lily glanced down at her hands. "Do you think my daddy still loves me?" The question hit Emma harder than she expected. She knelt beside Lily, taking her small hands in her own. "Oh, Lily," she whispered. "Of course he loves you. Then why is he never here?" Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. How could she explain adult grief and loss to a child? "Sometimes, grown-ups don't know how to show their feelings," she said carefully. "But that doesn't mean they don't love you. Sometimes, they just need a little help." Lily looked at her thoughtfully, then nodded as if accepting the answer. But Emma knew this wasn't something words alone could fix. That night, she found herself standing in the hallway outside Nicholas's office. The heavy oak door was slightly ajar, and she could see him sitting behind a massive desk, surrounded by contracts and glowing computer screens. She hesitated for only a second before knocking. "Come in," his deep voice called. Emma stepped inside, feeling the weight of his presence immediately. He looked up, his sharp blue eyes locking onto hers. "Is something wrong?" She took a deep breath. "I wanted to talk about Lily." His expression hardened, but she pressed on. "She's a wonderful little girl. Smart, kind. But she's lonely, Nicholas. She thinks you don't love her." His jaw clenched. "That's not true." "Then show her," Emma said, stepping closer. "She doesn't need grand gestures. She just needs you." For a moment, something flickered in his gaze. Something raw, something vulnerable. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. He leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. "I hired you to take care of Lily," he said. "Not to tell me how to be a father." Emma's stomach tightened, but she refused to back down. "I know my place, Mr. Carter. But if I didn't care about Lily, I wouldn't be doing my job." Silence stretched between them. Then, finally, he exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. "I'll try," he muttered. It wasn't much, but it was something. And Emma knew. It was the first crack in the walls he had built around himself. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the Carter household began to shift. True to his word, Nicholas made an effort, small at first, but noticeable. He started coming home earlier, sitting at the dinner table with Lily instead of eating in his office. He would ask about her day, listen as she rambled about her favorite books, and even attempt to join in on bedtime stories, though he was clearly out of practice. Lily bloomed under the attention, her laughter ringing through the halls more often. And Emma found herself watching Nicholas in a different way. He wasn't just the cold billionaire she had assumed him to be. He was a man who had been lost in his own grief, afraid to let anyone close. But just when things seemed to be improving, fate decided to test them all. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Emma had taken Lily to the park near the estate. The autumn air was crisp, golden leaves crunching under their feet as they played near the swings. Lily was giggling, racing ahead, her tiny feet kicking up dust. And then it happened. A car, sleek and black, sped around the corner far too fast. Emma's heart stopped as she saw it heading toward Lily, who was too distracted to notice. There was no time to think. "Lily!" Emma screamed, already sprinting. In a blur, she dove forward, grabbing the little girl and yanking her out of harm's way just as the car screeched past. They hit the ground hard, Emma's arms locked protectively around Lily as dust swirled around them. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Lily whimpered, her small fingers clinging to Emma's shirt. "Miss Emma?" Emma tightened her hold, her heart hammering. "I've got you, sweetheart. You're safe." The car had disappeared, leaving behind nothing but tire marks and the distant echo of screeching brakes. Shaking, Emma checked Lily over. A few scratches, a tear-streaked face, but she was okay. Relief crashed over her like a tidal wave. But then she looked up and froze. Nicholas was there. He had arrived just in time to see everything, his face ashen, his eyes locked on his daughter. He strode forward in an instant, scooping Lily into his arms and holding her so tightly Emma thought he might never let go. "You're okay," he murmured, pressing a kiss to Lily's hair. "You're okay." Lily sniffled, burying her face in his shoulder. "Miss Emma saved me." Nicholas's gaze snapped to Emma, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw something unguarded in his expression. Fear, gratitude, something deeper, something he didn't know how to say. His throat bobbed. "You." His voice was rough, raw. "You saved her." Emma let out a shaky breath. "I'd do it again in a heartbeat." For a long moment, they just stood there, the weight of the moment settling between them. And then, without warning, Nicholas reached forward, pulling Emma into an embrace along with Lily, as if he needed to hold them both to believe they were safe. And just like that, the walls Nicholas Carter had built so carefully began to crumble. The near accident changed everything. Nicholas was no longer just the distant, brooding billionaire. He was a father shaken to his core. That night, he didn't retreat to his office. Instead, he stayed by Lily's side, tucking her into bed, brushing her hair from her face as she drifted off to sleep. Emma watched from the doorway, her heart tightening at the tenderness in his touch. When he finally stepped out, their eyes met. "She could have died today," he said, his voice hoarse. "But she didn't," Emma said gently. "She's safe." Nicholas exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Because of you." His gaze locked onto hers, filled with something she couldn't quite decipher. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Emma whispered. "I care about Lily. I'd do anything to protect her." Something shifted between them in that moment, something unspoken yet undeniable. The days that followed were different. Nicholas became more present, more engaged. He canceled late meetings, had breakfast with Lily every morning, and even started joining their playtime in the evenings. Emma watched as father and daughter slowly rebuilt what had been broken, and it warmed her heart more than she expected. But along with that warmth came something else, something dangerous. She was falling for him. It was in the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the way his voice softened when he spoke her name. It was in the way her pulse quickened whenever he was near. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Emma found herself in the garden, enjoying the cool night air. She wasn't surprised when Nicholas joined her. "You've changed everything," he murmured, standing beside her. Emma turned to him, her heart racing. "I didn't do anything special. You saved my daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And you saved me." She swallowed hard, searching his face. "Nicholas." He took a step closer, his fingers brushing hers. "Tell me I'm not imagining this." Emma's breath hitched. "You're not." For a moment, it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of them. But then, reality came crashing in. "I can't," she whispered, stepping back. "I can't be another mistake in your life." Nicholas looked stricken. "Emma, you're not." But she shook her head, forcing herself to be strong. "Lily needs me, and I won't risk hurting her." She turned away before she lost the resolve to walk away. Behind her, Nicholas remained frozen in place, his hands clenched into fists. Neither of them realized that their hearts had already made the choice they were both too afraid to admit. Emma tried to convince herself she had done the right thing. She kept her distance, maintaining professionalism, focusing only on Lily. But her heart betrayed her every time Nicholas entered the room. She could feel his eyes on her, sense the tension between them, like an unfinished sentence waiting to be spoken. Lily noticed too. One evening, as Emma tucked her into bed, the little girl looked up at her with knowing eyes. "Miss Emma," she whispered, "do you love my daddy?" Emma's breath caught. "Lily, I see the way you look at him," Lily said softly, "and the way he looks at you." Emma smiled sadly, brushing a curl from Lily's face. "Sometimes, grown-ups have to make hard choices, sweetheart." Lily frowned. "But love isn't supposed to be a hard choice." Emma had no answer for that. The next morning, Nicholas made his choice for her. Emma was helping Lily with breakfast when Nicholas walked in, dressed impeccably as always. But today, there was something different in his eyes. determination. "Emma," he said, his voice steady. "Can we talk?" Emma glanced at Lily, who gave her a tiny, mischievous smile before running off to play. Nicholas stepped closer. "I've spent my whole life thinking love is a distraction, that it makes people weak. But you," his jaw tightened, "you made me realize I was wrong." Emma swallowed hard. "Nicholas." "No," he interrupted gently. "Let me finish." He reached for her hands, holding them between his own. "I almost lost my daughter. I almost lost you. And it made me see what really matters." Emma's heart pounded. "And what's that?" "You." His voice was raw, unguarded. "Lily. A family." Tears pricked at Emma's eyes. "Are you sure?" she whispered. Nicholas cupped her face, his touch gentle. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Emma let out a shaky laugh. "You're really bad at keeping things professional, Mr. Carter." A slow smile spread across his face. "Then fire me." She laughed, and before she could say another word, he kissed her, soft, slow, and full of promises. From the doorway, Lily giggled. "Finally." Nicholas pulled back, chuckling. "Looks like we had a little matchmaker all along." Emma smiled through her tears. "The best one." And as Nicholas wrapped his arms around both of them, Emma realized, sometimes love wasn't about making the safest choice. It was about making the right one. Love has a way of finding us when we least expect it. For Nicholas, it took nearly losing everything to realize what truly mattered. For Emma, it took stepping back to see that love isn't about avoiding risks. It's about taking the right ones. As for Lily, she had always known what her father and Nanny took so long to admit. Love, when real, is never a mistake. And so, in the grand Carter estate that once felt so cold and distant, warmth and laughter finally returned. Because sometimes, the people we least expect become the ones we can't live without.